Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the third session of our virtual parent series. Today we'll be discussing values-based parenting in a digital world. We're so glad that you're able to join us. This series is being funded by the Monroe-Meyer Guild. We thank the Guild very much for making this series possible. It's also being offered in collaboration with the School-Based Mental Health Collaborative, or SBMHC. So the SBMHC is a network of about 13 agencies from the Omaha metro area who work together to improve school mental health services. We will be delivering one virtual parent session each month. We started in November and it's been monthly with the exception of December. And then here's a look at the timeline for the series. Okay, so today is our February session where we're talking about limit setting with social media and electronics, as well as values-based parenting in a digital world. Next month, we will be talking about executive functioning and study skills. We'll then go into supporting youth with depression. And then finally, we'll talk about supporting social skill development in May. I would like to introduce our panelists for today's webinar. So Dr. Tara Suits is a licensed psychologist at the Columbus Community Hospital. She practices as a behavioral pediatric psychologist, serving children, teens, and families. Dr. Suits completed her undergraduate education in psychology and her master's and doctoral degrees in school psychology at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. She completed her clinical doctoral internship and postdoctoral fellowship at the Monroe-Meyer Institute at the University of Nebraska Medical Center. She then served as an assistant professor on faculty in the MMI psychology department for a number of years before recently moving her family to her hometown in Columbus, Nebraska. During her time in Omaha, Dr. Suits became highly involved in the Smart Gen Society, and this is a local nonprofit with a mission to empower smart choices in the digital world for kids, teens, and families. Her passion grew from there, and she is currently serving her second term as president of the board of directors for the organization. During her time with the organization, SmartGen has grown to serve over 65,000 students, parents, and educators across 15 states. The organization currently delivers an average of 20 presentations a week focused on encouraging smart and safe online activity. Dr. Suits is a speaker for SmartGen as well, delivering parenting presentations for parents of toddlers through high school students. We are so excited to have you here today. Dr. Suits, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you for the introduction, Mindy. I'm happy to be here today. We will be talking about values-based parenting in a digital world. And I love this meme because I think parenting in general can make us feel like we're a little out of touch and kind of struggling. And I think especially when we bring technology into it, it can make us feel really old and like we don't really know what's going on. So hopefully we can address that a little bit today. So as Mindy said, I am a licensed psychologist. I work in the Columbus Community Hospital Psychiatry Clinic, and I have been serving as president of the board of directors for the Smart Gen Society. So a couple of notes before I get started. Most of the photos are from Creative Commons or screenshots from my own social media, unless otherwise noted. This presentation is not meant to diagnose or treat addiction to electronics. I'm not going to be able to go through specific tech settings because it really varies by device and it's constantly changing with updates. And this presentation is really an introduction to this topic. We're going to scratch the surface because there's so much going on here. So I'm just going to highly encourage you to continue to dig in and learn more. So what is the Smart Gen Society? It's an Omaha-based nonprofit, and we work to empower kids, teens, parents to make smart digital choices. We are looking at the mental health impacts. We're looking at peer and predator exploitation, and really striving to help our students become more safe online. We focus on preventative digital education. So we go out and provide workshops to students at schools, parents, educators. We have done presentations in a couple of the corporations around Omaha, educating as part of their wellness programs. And we also do digital wellness. And a lot of what that looks at is mediation services when things kind of go wrong, or when families need help navigating sticky situations. If something has happened online, we work directly with the FBI to try to catch the bad guys. So we'll get into some of that a little bit more here as we go. So we work with K through 12 students, educators, counselors, administrators, university students, parents, grandparents, mentors, local and national nonprofits, corporations around Omaha, and then local and national law enforcement agencies. So the average American screen time per day. So for 8 to 12-year-olds, we're looking at about 5 to 6 hours a day. And for teens, this is about 9 hours a day. And we actually saw this increase during the COVID lockdowns, and we really haven't seen it decrease since restrictions have loosened. And so we saw that kind of skyrocket, and it hasn't rebounded down. In terms of social media, we see that about 95% of our high school students are on social media, about 85% of our middle school students, and some of the preliminary data that we're getting from elementaries is that about 75% of our elementary students, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, are on social media. And this is a big problem. So we're gonna come back to that too. So how much screen time should my child have? And I would argue that's the wrong question. So when we start with how much screen time should my child have, we are indicating that that's our top priority. That's the first chunk of time that we're going to protect. I would encourage you to think about instead, what values, skills, priorities do I want my child to have? What are my 5 or 10-year goals for my child? Do I want them to love learning? Do I want them to crave physical activity and being outside and playing with friends? Do I want them to practice kindness and empathy and perspective taking? Do I want them to have a sense of self-reliance and have some basic skills like how to do laundry and cook more than microwave mac and cheese? Do I want to foster some critical thinking, emotion regulation? Do I want them to be able to handle stressors and kind of roll with the punches a little bit? These are the things that we want to be thinking about. What do we actually want for our kids long term? Because we need to think about, what do they need to get there? We need to be thinking about, how do we practice the things we want to get good at? Because we get good at what we practice. If we practice being a couch potato, we'll be a really good couch potato. If we want to practice teamwork and soccer skills, then we need to be practicing those things. So we know that every hour on screens replaces something else. So it's replacing outdoor play, it's replacing communication, it's replacing learning basic skills like cooking and spending time as a family as we're doing that. Reading, pretend play, physical activity like riding bikes together as a family, good sleep. But unfortunately, a lot of what we end up doing during the day is kind of what this little girl down here in the corner is doing, spending time on the iPad kind of plugged into our devices. So when we're budgeting our time, where we start indicates our priority. And so that's why I don't really like that question of how much screen time should my child have, because we should be thinking, how much sleep do I want to make sure that they're getting? How much reading during the day do I want to make sure that they're getting? How much physical activity do I want to make sure that they're getting? So if we map out all of our priorities first and kind of figure out how much time do I really want them spending on each of these things, then maybe we can fill in some screen time in the gaps. But if we start with screen time, that is going to be the protected activity. And then the other things that maybe are more tied to our values as a family, those get, kind of backseat priority, back burner. They might not even happen. So I would just encourage you to kind of flip your mindset with that and be thinking about protecting your time for the stuff that actually lines up with your values. But we're going to come back to that because it actually starts with us. And so I don't know about you guys, but I think a lot of families can end up looking like this, where everyone, I mean, maybe they're all in the same room, maybe they're not, but family members are all plugged in on their own devices, sitting kind of not really engaging with each other, but more engaged with the activity that they're doing on their device. So we live in a very fast-paced, distracted, plugged-in world. This really isn't just our kids, this is us too. I think looking at some of these pictures, we can probably relate to what's going on in some of these. So being the mom who's balancing all of the things, carrying a baby on the phone, trying to work from home and the distractions that come from that, kids trying to get our attention while we're working from home, being out and about doing fun activities with our kids, but we're not really there. We're kind of half there. We're physically with them, but maybe mentally our head is somewhere else. And then maybe we're seeing kind of some of these attention-seeking, disruptive behaviors pop up from kids as they're trying to get their attention from us while we're on our own devices. So kids have a lot to compete with to secure their parents' attention, and they're getting constant messages of our priorities. So if we're working from home, they're getting a message of, well, child, you're not my priority right now. My work is my priority, which that might have its place, but we have to be very careful about what that balance looks like, how often they're feeling like they're taking the backseat to work. Our social media, just engagement with our phones, every time a notification goes off, we're scrambling to check that. When we pick up our kids from school, are we fully present to engage with them, or are we on our device while we're picking them up? This picture up here in the top left, this little girl, I just think about if she were coming into the room to tell her parents something difficult that happened that day, or something that didn't really go very well, and she came into the room and they're both sitting on the sofa looking at their phones, that's really hard to break into. So if she's already starting with this difficult thing she needs to share with them, and she walks in and her parents are very clearly engaged in something else, it can be a little defeating and a barrier for kids to actually open up and talk to their parents when their parents don't appear to be available or accessible. So I would encourage you to think about, when your child is talking to you, where are your eyes? Are you making eye contact with them? And what are your kids distracting you from? And is that really the way that you want it to be? Do you want it to be that your phone is your priority and your child is distracting you from your phone? Or do you want that to be flipped? And what are you missing out on while your eyes are down at your screen? How many times are you missing that your child is looking at you to see if you're watching or to get your feedback on something? And what kind of impact is that having on them? So I think big picture, we really want to avoid, as we get into the screen time talk, we want to avoid a do as I say, not as I do kind of dynamic. We want to be the role models for our kids as we kind of navigate this, because we really can't expect kids to have more advanced or better skills than we do as adults. And so if we want our kids to have good boundaries with social media and screen time, we have to show them what that looks like. So I think it can be helpful to think about, what are your values as a parent? What adjectives would you want someone, like your child, to use to describe you? How do you want your kids to remember you? And who's a parent that you admire? What is it that you admire about them? And so the words that kind of come to mind as you're thinking through these questions, those are a really good indicator of what your values are as a parent. And so we really need to be kind of keeping pulse on, are we aligning with those values? Are we living up to those values? Because a lot of disconnect happens when we're not. I think for most of us, we really want to be a engaged and connected parent. And so some of that is unplugging, slowing down, making sure you're actually present. You're not just in the same room It's not just that your body is there, but your mind is there too. Make eye contact, get down on your child's level, and then prioritize relationships, put them first. I just think this quote is really impactful. And I see this over and over again in my work, that parent-child connection is huge. And we're going to talk about a couple of different ways that we can really foster that, especially in this kind of digital space. But it's the most powerful mental health intervention known to mankind. You can protect your kids from a lot by really focusing on that relationship with them. So I'll sprinkle in, we'll kind of summarize some of these tips at the end, but I'm going to sprinkle them in throughout as well. And I would just encourage you to think about ways to have devoted screen-free time in your family. And that's for everyone. So it's not like we're going to say, oh, kids, you're not going to watch TV today, but I'm going to sit in the kitchen or on the couch and do my thing on my device. It's everybody. So some ways that you might go about doing that, there's a book that is out there called 24/6, and it's the idea that one day a week, you're completely disconnected from technology. So that would be one kind of powerful way to reduce that screen impact and practice that connection with family. Simpler ways might be no phones at mealtime, no devices, no TV on at mealtime. We're going to focus on our connections then. Or having certain activities or rooms that we really don't have device use happening. But I think, kind of coming back to that, parents, we are the role models. We set the standard for what's normal screen time, screen use in our households. So we see a lot of adult screen use and sharing content of our kids. And this is something we really need to kind of take a critical thought to what we are sharing. So what we are sharing as part of our parenting. So I'm going to show you a quick little video here.
Just like the sea, I don't know where to go. Through dirt and shadow I grow. I'm reaching light through the struggle. Just like the sea, I'm chasing the wonder. I unravel myself, all in slow motion.
Okay, so if I hope you guys were able to catch that, but one of the things that video pointed out is that average 12-year-old has over 1,300 photos on social media of them shared by their parents, and they really don't have any control over that, and they haven't had the opportunity to consent to that. And those photos can be downloaded and abused and shared in ways that we wouldn't even necessarily imagine. And it creates this kind of online footprint or an online brand of our child and for our child before they're really even able to agree to what they want that to look like. And I see, so kind of a good example, not even a photo, but a good example that comes to mind for me. So I don't know, some of you guys might be familiar with the Facebook group West Omaha Moms in the Know, or Part 2 or whatever it is now. And people will get on there on Facebook and they will ask questions about lots of things like, where should I get my oil changed? Or does anyone have a good recommendation for I don't know, a maple tree, which is that's really benign and innocent. But then there's also parents who will post long, detailed questions about their child's health or their child's mental health. And in the process, exposing lots of information about their child. And I remember a specific situation where my kids were playing sports, and there was a child added to the sports team, and nobody really knew who that family was. And one of the moms was a little curious, so she looked on Facebook and came across a post about this child in West Omaha Moms in the Know. And without even asking for it, we were given a full medical and mental health history on this child before we had even met this child. And it kind of broke my heart, because I'm sure that this 7-year-old had no consent or agreement to posting this content online, but it's out there for anyone to know. And so I would really encourage you to be very, very careful about what you are sharing about your kids online, and to think about what kind of a footprint that's creating for them. And we can start to teach our kids consent by asking, hey, I took this super cute picture of you. Do you mind if I share it online? And if they say yes, say, awesome, thanks, I'll post it. And if they say no, say, okay, well, I'm glad I asked, I won't post it. Asking for their consent with their images is a great first step toward empowering them and teaching them to learn how to give consent, for some of those bigger things when they become a little bit older. So with that, we're going to transition a little bit into talking about some of the specific apps. I had one question come in that said, what sites or apps do students with developmental disabilities have access to that appear to cause them the most problems? And how can we help them? I would say that we've got a couple of big ones. Snapchat, TikTok, and Instagram are some big ones. Discord is really bad news. I'd keep your kids far away from Discord. And in terms of gaming, Roblox is probably my least favorite. It's like Predator Haven. So we are going to talk a little bit about some of the things that kids are facing online, because I think how do we help them is we have to understand it ourselves. We need to be educated. And our kids are facing a lot more online than we necessarily might know. So with that, let's see. So a couple of things we're going to talk through. We're going to talk through what's happening with our data, concerns related to privacy, predators, and then mental health concerns, which runs the gamut of exposure to age-inappropriate content, bullying, comparison, self-esteem, depression and anxiety, self-harm and suicidal ideation, and subcultures. So we're going to take some of this apart a little bit here. Okay, so first of all, I want you to just kind of think for a second, how much did you pay when you downloaded Instagram for the first time? Nothing, right? It was free. But how? It's because Instagram is not the product. We are. So there are over 700 data points that each social media company is collecting on each of us, ranging from where we live, where we work, how we get there, to what's our favorite perfume, what's our coffee drink of choice, what's our political affiliation, what are our kids' names, how old are they, what do they like, on and on and on. So they're collecting all of this data and then they're selling it to companies. So in 2022, Meta platforms, so that's Instagram, Facebook, Messenger Kids, and WhatsApp, they generated a revenue of over $116 billion US in 1 year. And that's not money they're making by people downloading their app and paying for the app. That's the money that they're making off of us and selling our data. So they sell that data to companies who turn around and target us very, very specifically and skillfully to sell us all sorts of things. And so when we've got kids on these social media apps, we're pitting an 11-year-old against some of the most creative and powerful marketers out there. So the first kind of cost is our data. Another cost is our security and our privacy. So a lot of these apps are tracking our location. So this first image here, that's an image of Snapchat. When your settings are not set to protect your location, all of your friends can see where you are on a map. And actually, with more recent updates, they can click on you and get directions to you, step-by-step directions that opens up a map app to get you there. So we see lots of concerns with this. This information in the wrong hands is terrible. We see kids, maybe stalking their significant other, or that domestic kind of control within relationships, checking where their friends are and monitoring that. And then also some of that like fear of missing out. If I see all of my friends are hanging out in one place together and I'm not there, that's going to cause a lot of stress as well. In terms of privacy, and all of this is not app specific. So just because I'm talking about it in Snapchat here doesn't mean that this is the only app that this is happening. I'm really just giving you kind of a broad overview of some of the concerns here. So just assume that what I'm talking about, even if I'm talking about it in specifics to Instagram, it's happening on all the other apps as well. So this Instagram screenshot, this is from my own device. So when we're allowing these apps to access our camera and microphone, we're getting the idea that how you'll use this. Okay, so I'll use it to take photos, record videos, and preview visual and audio effects. How they'll use it to show me previews of visual and audio effects and how these settings work, kind of talks about it there. So especially this is from my cell phone. So on here, there is no way to get off of this screen except to hit continue, which is essentially to give that permission. There's no little X button. There's no way off of this screen unless you hit continue or close out the app and start again. On my iPad, there's a little X, but on my phone, there's not. So the problem with this is, say you don't want to activate your camera and your microphone, or if you do. So you're thinking, okay, this is only going to happen when I am creating a reel or whatever. So personal story, I was sitting here in my office not too long ago, and I think I had accidentally hit continue on something happened where my settings got messed up. And I was sitting here in my office, I was watching a video on Instagram about ADHD. One of my friends runs an ADHD account, and I was learning some of the things that she was talking about. And suddenly I looked up and I noticed that there was a little green dot at the top of my screen. And I was like, why is there a green dot up there? Because I'm just watching videos and eating lunch. And quick Google search told me that my camera and my microphone were on. And that didn't make sense because I wasn't recording anything. So I closed out of the app and tried it again. And again, the green light came on. So when I was in Instagram, the green light was on. And then when I closed out of Instagram, the green light was off. And I went and I changed my settings because I realized I had at some point, or some setting changed. I'm not sure how this changed, but long story short, they were watching me eat my lunch while I was watching ADHD videos. And I had no idea that the camera was on until I saw that green dot. And that situation is not described in this little blurb about how they'll use the camera access. So kind of moral of the story, don't necessarily take things at face value, because there's times where this data is being used in ways that you really were not expecting. Okay, this next one talks about predators. There are predators on every single app. If kids like the app, the predators are there because the predators go where the kids are. So one of the biggest problems we run into is direct messaging. So this situation is, this comes from Protect Young Eyes. It's an organization that does similar in some ways work to Smart Gen Society. So what they did is they set up this fake account. So it's very easy to lie about your age on social media. So just as it's easy for kids to say, oh, I'm actually 18, it's very easy for a 56-year-old to say, oh, I'm actually 13. So they set up a fake account as a young girl. So they opened up an Instagram account. They took 2 selfies and posted that, fake selfies. They hashtagged their photo. They liked a few photos, followed a few similar accounts. And then very quickly, they were averaging over 10 direct messages a day with flattery, saying, oh, I love your style. Do you want to be an influencer? Sending pornographic photos and links, and trying to start live videos with this account. So this is one example. And this one, as I say, it was creatively deceptive. So it's a link saying, will you rate my private selfies? But it's a picture of a puppy. So maybe it's puppy pictures. So if you picture a 10 or an 11-year-old getting this in their direct messages and being kind of naive and innocent to the world, this is something that they might click on. But what this was actually a pornographic dating website. And it opened within Instagram without ever leaving the app. So this stuff is really just kind of forced at kids. You might say, okay, well, my accounts are on private. They're protected. They're not going to be targeted by a predator. Not true. So here's just a quick example. So if you go to any Instagram post on the website and you click on the likes to see who's all liked this picture, you get a rundown of everyone who has liked this picture. You click on any user and you get to their profile page. Now this account is private, right? So anything that's above this area I can see, but I can't see any of their photos. It's all private. However, if I click on these 3 little dots up here, I'm realizing I'm using my mouse pointing to this on my screen and you guys probably can't see this at all. Hopefully you're following my circles. So if you click on the 3 little dots, a little box pops up where you are able to send a message. So even though I am not friends with this person, they have a private account, I still am able to send them a message. And this is true on Snapchat. I think it's true on TikTok as well. This is not specific to Instagram. You can send messages to people that are not your friends. So one way that predators find kids, they go to the types of pages that kids tend to like and comment on, and then they just kind of follow the trail from there. They will also use hashtags to get to kids. So hashtags are used to kind of catalog or organize content on social media. So if I wanted to see beachwear across the platform, I could search the word beachwear, which actually the images in this are pretty innocent. A lot of times it ends up being a lot more sexualized than this. But you can put a hashtag on anything. It doesn't actually have to be relevant. And so that's what this guy's doing. This is a 34-year-old daddy looking for 13 or older girls. And here is his Snapchat handle. So if you have a kiddo who is scrolling through Instagram and they see something like this and they're like, oh, I wonder what's going on Snapchat with this account. And this is one of the things that predators will do is they'll try to pull them to a different account, Snapchat being one of them, because the pictures disappear and it's easier to hide things from parents. But an innocent kid might look at this and go pursue and say, hey, what's going on here? And pretty soon they are involved in a lot more than they bargained for. And it becomes a very, very serious safety issue. Another, this is a very busy page, but these are screenshots. I have a fake Instagram account where I'm set up as a 14-year-old. And these are some of the things that were presented to me on my Explore page. So, you might be interested in this. Maybe some like mild sexualized content going on here, a little bit going on. So, here's kind of here's an image that it's not really sexual, but if you were to click on this, the algorithm is like, ooh, you like pictures like that. And then it starts sending you and presenting you more of that content. And to keep you intrigued, it starts upping the ante and making it a little bit more advanced or exciting. And so this kind of image, if you're looking at images like this, this is a little bit phallic going on here. This looks like it might be a vape. And again, this was me signed up as a 14-year-old. Here we have a Ziploc thong with goldfish crackers in it. So if you start clicking on these things and you get curious and you look into this, the algorithm, and this is especially true on TikTok. Their algorithm is insane. But it starts figuring out what you're interested in, and it gives you more of that, and it kind of ups the ante a little bit. So this one says something about how her man's Valentine's Day gifts started bleeding. We've got, let's see, over here, we've got some blood. So you start with some innocent videos of blood, and then suddenly it gets a little bit more intense from there. And this is all just on the Explore page. This is stuff that's just given to you that you might be interested in. And then it's using that data to figure out, okay, what can I send you next? So there's also a lot of like subculture content going on here too. So we've got suicidal subculture, we've got self-harm subculture, and I actually put these white boxes over this image here. These are all pictures of cuts. So kids finding inspiration on how to cut or what to use to cut. There are pages all over Instagram focused on suicide and self-harm. And then TikTok, this is, a lot of times it's fun, cute dance videos. But the algorithm on TikTok is crazy smart, and it starts to figure you out better than you even know yourself. So if you start clicking on stuff that's just slightly sexualized, it'll really take that and run with it. Or if you research how to lose weight, then pretty soon you're going to be in a rabbit hole of content focused on eating disorders. We also see a lot of dangerous challenges arising from TikTok. Predators are very busy on TikTok, and you can download anyone's video. So when we talked about the sharenting and parents posting videos of their kids, TikTok especially, there's some TikTok famous parents who really just make their money by presenting content of their kids. And you go into the comment section on some of these videos, and it's like 45-year-old men saying, "Oh, she's so cute. Love that outfit," or whatever. And these adults are able to download these videos. Except for grandma, there's really no reason why anyone should be downloading a video of your child. And so there's a lot of pretty gross stuff happening in these apps. The other thing to think about TikTok too is all the content is forever, and it's not owned by the US. So even drafts, like if you start to create a video on TikTok, but you don't ever publish it, that is still saved forever somewhere, not on our servers, someone else's servers. In the United States, the algorithm on TikTok sends them sexualized videos, eating disorder content, challenges, kind of mind-numbing stuff that really doesn't make you more intelligent. But in other countries, specifically China, the TikTok algorithm sends those kids information about, what it takes to be a doctor or an astronaut or STEM type content that actually helps these kids kind of advance. So these apps are not developed for the best interests of our children and their development. And I think that that's something to be kind of keeping in mind. So big picture, we really need to know what's going on with these apps. Otherwise, we don't even have a place to start when we're talking to our kids about it. There's a lot that kids are facing online, and the minimum age legally, actually, for a child to have social media is 13. And that's because of the Children's Online Privacy and Protection Act, which states that companies cannot sell the data of anyone who is under the age of 13. So by signing up for a social media account, you are agreeing to have your data sold to everybody. And so if you are not 13, then you should not be signing up. Some parents will say, oh, I don't care if we sell their data, that's fine. All their friends are doing it. I don't want them to miss out. And I would just encourage you to kind of think, if it's easy for your 11-year-old to lie and say that they are 13, it is just as easy for someone who is 50 to lie and say that they are 13. And if you are ready to put your child in the same online room as that person, that's a hard bridge to cross. So just in terms of the data, 13 is the rule. But I think there's a lot more that goes into that in terms of, is your child ready to handle what's going on online? Do they have the self-control to manage this? So 13s are bare minimum, but some 13-year-olds still might not be ready. So like I said, this was really just kind of a teaser to some of the stuff that's happening online. SmartGen, this is what they do day in and day out, is they talk about the nitty-gritty details on what's going on in these different apps. So there's free content on the SmartGen website, which I'll post at the end of this talk, but there are reset checklists so that you can go through with your family and talk about all of these different apps and learn about them yourselves. There's all sorts of content on the SmartGen website, but really I would encourage you, if you hear of a SmartGen talk in your local area, get over there and listen to that talk, because you will learn so much more than what we were able to kind of talk about with this part today. You can also just call the SmartGen office, and they are more than happy to work with you and educate you on these different apps. So what is all of this doing to our kids? We are seeing just skyrocketing anxiety and depression, loss of empathy. One example, I'll just share real quick. I was watching a video of, I think it was like a security video in a gym at a high school. And the kids were walking laps around the gym. It must have been like before school or something, before they were able to go to their classes. So they're walking laps around the gym. And in the security video, you see one student fall and collapse on the ground, and nobody stops. The kids keep walking past. So this teenager is laying on the floor, and everyone just keeps passing him by. Nobody stops to see if he's okay. Eventually, like more than a minute later, many kids have passed by. An adult comes over, checks the student. Shortly after, you see a stretcher coming in, and you see the student loaded up onto a stretcher and wheeled out of the room. But for that many students to pass that student by, laying there on the ground, we're losing touch with kind of that human connection, that empathy. So that's just something very concerning as we kind of think about what impact this is having on our kids. We also see damaged attention spans, and I would say post-COVID lockdowns and having to do the online schooling, our organization has seen a dramatic shift in attention spans from students. So we used to be able to come in and do like an assembly auditorium full of students and talk through some of this content. And we would have really high engagement from the students, very attentive behavior. Post-COVID lockdowns, these kids can't sit still. They're not able to engage and listen to the content, and we're having to change our model and work more in small groups to increase that engagement and that attention. We also see negative self-image, cyberbullying, high-risk behaviors like taking photos or doing challenges, digital addictive type behaviors, so subcultures. We talked about that with the self-harm and suicidal ideation, sustained fight or flight response. So kids, when they're playing video games, a lot of times that's like a life or death game, right? So you're trying not to die in your game. And so the part of your brain that's in charge of your survival instincts doesn't necessarily logically grasp that you're playing a video game. So some of that fight or flight response is activated while you're playing these life or death games. And then you're playing these games for hours upon hours. And so after kids step away from video games, we see a massive crash in emotion regulation, and they're not able to handle stressors. They fly off the handle, have meltdowns. And that's because their cortisol levels are just out of control at that point. We also see child sexual abuse material, and kids are creating their own content, either because peers are asking them to, or a predator is asking them to. And then once they create content and share it, then someone might come back and say, well, if you don't create me more content, I'm going to blast this off to your principal and your teachers and everyone at your school. And that can become a very dangerous situation as well. And then pornography, kids are getting exposed to far more, and it's really shaping their concept of human sexuality and what healthy relationships look like. So we're going to hit a few of these a little bit more closely. So the way that young people use their leisure time has fundamentally changed in the last several years. So how do many young people spend their free time, and where do they spend that free time? Well, a lot of times it's in their room, in their bed, maybe in the dark, on their device, right? And that really doesn't look a whole lot different than depression. It doesn't look a whole lot different from this photo laying there just miserable. And when you act like a person with depression, you start to feel like a person with depression. So we have seen significant increases in young adults and adolescents who are reporting depressive or suicidal symptoms. So according to the CDC, the rate of suicide for kids aged 10 to 24 increased 60% between 2007 and 2018. So that breaks down to about 130% for kids 10 to 14 and 46% for kids 15 to 19. So especially those younger kids, this data it's skyrocketing and it's alarming. And here's some more recent data. This is just published by the CDC. This allows us to look at 2021, and this is suicidal ideation. So seriously considering attempting suicide. So it's increased far more for girls than it has for boys. But in 2011, it was at 19%. And by 2021, we're up to 30%. So that's 1 in 3 high school students who are seriously considering attempting suicide. Our kids are not okay right now. We're also seeing concerns with sleep. These devices are providing a lot of blue light exposure. So blue light is the kind of light that tells your body that it's daytime. So when blue light is, when your eyes are exposed to blue light, it decreases your natural melatonin production. It tells your body it's time to be awake. So usually what happens is that blue light would historically come from the sun, right? Sun would go down, the blue light would go away, our melatonin production would begin, and we'd become sleepy and be ready for bed. But now with our devices, it's essentially like we have a small blue sun or small sun in our hand with the blue light coming out of our device. And so our body isn't necessarily getting that melatonin production going when it needs to. And so we have tons of kids who are taking melatonin, but if they're taking melatonin while also engaged in blue light exposure or on their devices until bedtime, that's essentially neutralizing that melatonin. We're treading water in that situation. We also see sleep impacted by engagement because we're not allowing ourselves to let our mind wind down. We're keeping our mind rushing and racing until the last second, and then we try to fall asleep after that. There can also be content online that makes it really hard for kids to sleep. So if they're running into something that's a little bit disturbing for them, or something scary happened, or they're being bullied, that really gets in the way of sleep. And so one of the things we see is that sleep deprivation affects mood and is a major risk factor for anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts. We also see a lot of anxiety. We see social isolation, social anxiety, or fear of missing out. Like I said, with that Snapchat map before, if you see all your friends are in one place hanging out without you, that can cause a lot of anxiety. Comparison. So even for adults, we're scrolling through beautiful pictures of other people's homes and we're comparing our lives to their lives. Kids are doing that too. So body image, material access, what people are doing, what they're good at, all of that comparison can cause a lot of stress for kids. And then they have access to all the stress and all the problems of the world with whatever bias you throw on that. And they're being exposed to all of those things and having to process that. So there's a lot triggering anxiety here. And then I think too, our kids are losing the ability to kind of sit in the socially awkward situations and still be okay. So you run into a situation where you get to dinner before other people, and instead of sitting there and kind of looking around, you feel the need to pull out your device and look busy, or look like you have something important to do, or just entertain yourself. But we don't practice that nuanced social skill of sitting in those uncomfortable situations and like handling that. We always try to escape now. So that causes a lot of anxiety when they don't have that escape. Cyberbullying, this is happening a lot. And what's scary about it is it can go undetected. So we might not even know that it's happening. The kids might not know who it is. It might be anonymous. The things that they're being told online, they might not know who it's coming from. But the biggest thing is that they can't escape. So when we were kids, if we were being bullied, you'd go home and you would maybe have a break from 3 p.m. until 8 a.m. the next day. But when you are being cyberbullied and you have your own phone or your own iPad, you can't escape. You go home and that bully is still in your pocket. And that bully is targeting you at 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. and you don't ever get a break. And so this is a really harmful piece of what's going on. And then another thing that we run into is this self-made child pornography. So it's very common for kids to ask one another for photos of each other. And what ends up happening is those photos can be shared beyond kind of what the maybe creator intended, and it can cause a lot of grief. So when it goes wrong, when photos go to the wrong hands, or they go to the wrong place, or it escalates too far, we see a very high risk for suicidal ideation at those times. And then another thing to kind of keep in mind is that self-made child pornography can be a federal offense for parents, because parents own the child's device. So they are the ones paying for the plan. They are the ones that paid for the device. So any content that is on that child's phone, the parent is the one who will be held responsible for that. And so these are the kinds of things that I think having these conversations about real world implications of some of these actions online, having those conversations with your kid is just very, very important. Letting them know that if someone's asking for pictures, talk about your family values related to that, or What happens if a predator starts asking for pictures or puts you in a extortion, sextortion kind of situation and says, if you don't send me more pictures or a video of you doing X, Y, and Z, I'm going to come to your house and hurt your family. And this, I'm not trying to be dramatic. Those are the kinds of things that ends up happening, and kids feel completely stuck and feel like they have to share those photos. And so having those conversations, and we'll come back to that here in a moment, that's just critical. So how do we combat digital connectiveness and mental health issues, the kind of the fallout from that? So the biggest thing is to create a family plan. So communicate. We're going to talk about all of these a little bit more in depth here. Be open about your supervision expectations. Don't be afraid to set rules. You should know all the passwords to the phone and all apps because you are the owner of the device and will be responsible for what's on there. Set screen limits, but identify your priorities first to guide those limits, and just recognize that real growth happens offline. One of the questions that I got was, what suggestions do you have for parents who receive a lot of resistance from teens when they try to create new boundaries? I think part of this is starting early. So start talks with your kids about this stuff as early as you can. And what that's going to take is educating yourself as a parent. Know the popular apps, know what's going on there, know how to identify grooming, and don't ever assume that your kids are safe online. But don't be afraid to bring up the tough and awkward topics, because if you don't educate your kids, someone else will. So I think we can gain some respect from our kids when we have kind of the down-to-earth real talk about what's going on with all of this. And I think the other piece of it is get their buy-in. What are their goals, their values? Are they on track for that? What's getting in their way and what's making it hard for them? So I think having these like raw conversations and communicating with their kids about this stuff can help get their buy-in to put some limits on some screen time. Kids also really don't want to be taken advantage of. So if we kind of teach them how to discern the end game of these predators or even the app developers, I think that helps motivate them to make some changes as well. Like these developers, they have tech-free homes. They recognize what this is doing to kids, and they protect their own children from that. And if that's what the developers are doing for their own children, I think a lot of kids can recognize, well, that's not right. Why is it different for their kids than it is for us? So I think education can go a long way, but we have to be educated first. And then I think another big thing is be someone that your child feels safe talking to. So don't be the parent that has the giant emotional reactions when your child shares something really hard with you, because you're closing that door. They don't want to deal with that. They don't want to tell you things when they're worried about how you're going to react. And sometimes that also looks like assaulting them with questions. You know, my motto is listen first, teach later. So when they share the hard stuff, just focus on being a good listener. Don't try to correct them or do I told you so, or turn it into a teaching moment. That's not the time to do it. Make sure they feel safe talking to you and they don't regret opening that box with you. Later, you can come back and have some teaching moments. Hold regular family meetings to discuss online topics. So another one of the questions was how to teach kids how to identify what is inappropriate that their friends will show them. I think we have to face this stuff head on. Like I said, if we don't teach our kids about this stuff, someone else is going to. And so if you have these conversations with your kids and talk about your family values and your goals, talk about what you're seeing as trends or dangers, what they're experiencing online, what wins did they feel like they had? Like if they saw a predator in their DMs and they just blocked them or deleted it, praising that. Teaching our kids critical thinking and how to identify predators. If someone shows up in your DMs and says, hey, I love your style. Do you think you could represent our brand? These companies are, first of all, it's probably not a company. Second of all, they are not directly reaching out to 12 and 14-year-olds to get marketing set up. It's a scam. So teaching kids how to identify that, having conversations about what's appropriate to share, and really just focusing on the do's. How do we, instead of focusing on all the don't behaviors, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that, focus on the do. So what should you do that is smart and healthy online behavior? Supervision, active participation, and communication. I do not encourage families to purchase like the spy apps where they're spying on their children. That is not benefiting your child. It's not teaching them how to be a good digital citizen and how to navigate what's going on. Also, your kids will always find a way, and predators will find a way to outsmart you if you guys aren't working on the same team as your kid. So predators will give kids devices to hook up to the Wi-Fi, or kids will give each other old phones and they will connect to the Wi-Fi, and you might not know that your child has this device. And so if you guys are working in a situation where you're working against each other, where your child is trying to hide things from you and you're trying to spy and sneak around on your child's probably going to win. So we really have to be on the same page, and they have to know our participation and our communication. So setting the stage from the get-go, I'm going to buy you this device, and part of the rules of the device is that I'm going to check in every once in a while and see what's going on. And we should be checking content. Is what you're posting appropriate or safe? Checking privacy settings. So do you have your account set to private? Do you have your location settings blocked in the different apps? Checking contacts. Do you actually know the people that you're communicating with, or do you have strangers that you're communicating with? Keep it positive. Again, focusing on reinforcing good social media behaviors. And when there are mistakes, approach it from a place of love and respect and an opportunity to learn. Work to build trust. I don't recommend the hover helicopter parenting. Kids have to have a little room to learn from their experiences, because if they go through high school with you micromanaging their text conversations with their friends to leaving the house, they have not learned any good skills on how to do that on their own. So they need guidance, but not control. And keep it developmentally appropriate. So I compare it with going to the park. When kids are little, we don't send them off to the park by themselves. We go with them and we teach them how to look for the creepy white van and how to say no to strangers and not to eat candy that people hand you and whatever. The same is true for the digital world. But for some reason, we seem to have it a little bit backwards sometimes, where if we hand our child the tablet and let them watch YouTube, we kind of let them just, let the preschooler do their thing navigating YouTube and just watching whatever they want to watch. But then by the time that they're high schoolers and they're starting to interact with people more, we get this urge to start micromanaging and start snooping and knowing exactly what's going on and who they're talking to and what they're saying. But it really should be the opposite. It should be that when they're little, we are teaching them and holding their hand as they are walking into the internet and giving them guidance on what to look for and what to stay away from. And then as they get a little bit older, we start to give them a little bit more freedom to practice the things that we've been teaching all along. So I think keeping that developmental trajectory in mind, where we have to start giving them some freedom as they get a little bit older so they can practice being a good digital citizen before they're an adult. The other questions I got was, how do you monitor Snapchat usage? You can't fully. That's what Snapchat was designed for. It's designed for keeping content secret from the people that are around you, because the images disappear, so to speak. They disappear from your device, but they live on a server somewhere else. So they're not really gone, just someone else has them, you don't. And there's specific features within Snapchat that block parent participation. So there's a section called My Eyes Only, which requires a separate passcode than the phone passcode to access. And that is a very high likelihood that there's pornographic content being kept in that area if that's being used. So Snapchat is one that is going to take a lot of just proactive communication if that's something that your child is going to be using. And by child, I mean someone who's 13 plus for sure, maybe 15 plus. How do you ensure that you are keeping your teen safe on the internet without having them feel like you're invading their privacy? That's another question that I got. And I think it, again, comes down to that communication and just setting that as the standard from the very, very beginning. And I think part of it is being careful to keep it developmentally appropriate. So it's really hard to swoop in when they're teenagers and start micromanaging their actions when that's not what we've been doing all along. So it's a fine line to walk, and it probably depends a little bit family by family, but I think communication and getting their buy-in, having real talk with them about what's going on, I think that can help facilitate that. I think another piece of this is don't be afraid to set rules. I think we didn't necessarily grow up with devices in this capacity, and so it's a little bit of uncharted territory. So when you're setting your rules, know what your priorities are. What are your priorities in terms of what you want them spending their time on? What's important to you as a family? What skills do you want them to have? Know your personal boundaries of what you're comfortable with and what you're going to be able to navigate with your child. Know your child. Are they mature enough to be able to handle feeling left out without, caving into just a huge decrease in mood and maybe an increase in suicidal ideation? And follow your values as you're setting rules. And then use some resources. So our phones have screen time features. I think on Android, it's called Digital Wellness Tools, and on the iPhones, it's called Screen Time. But you can use those features to kind of let things operate for you, where certain apps are available during certain times of the day, or for certain amounts of time. Certain content is blocked always. You can also use Wi-Fi and router features to establish some of that as well. So to say, my child's device doesn't get internet access after 8 p.m. And then you can, when we're talking about balancing your priorities first, my family has used an app called Privilege Points for some time, where my kids can earn points by completing certain activities, and then they can use those points to buy screen time. But it sets the stage that these are the priority activities first, then screen time follows. But I think the biggest thing is just remember that kids need boundaries. They thrive with boundaries, and you have permission as their parent to implement those boundaries. And someday they might even thank you for that, because it's really hard. I mean, you think about how hard it is as an adult to separate from our screens, and it's that much harder for kids, and they need our help to do that. So one rule that I would really encourage you guys to think about is no phones or devices in the bedrooms, charge devices in the parent's room at night. We see increased safety when it comes to the bullying and the predators. They're not necessarily going to be taking photos of themselves and sharing it when the phone is in the parent's room. We see more sleep quantity. They sleep longer. They're able to go to bed better. And sleep quality. They're not getting interrupted by dings and notifications all night long. I heard one story of a dad who took his child's phone overnight, and between the hours of, I think it was like 11 p.m. and 6 a.m., I think there were over 180 Snapchat notifications, like throughout the middle of the night. So that is very disruptive to a child's sleep, which is very closely tied to their mood and well-being. So if something goes wrong online, just remember that the child is always the victim. It is not their fault if they are exploited, because they don't have the ability to consent. They're not old enough to be able to think things through, and they are very easy targets of manipulation through coercion and sextortion. So if your child has been victimized online, check your own emotional reaction first. Accept their disclosure with love, empathy, and support. So be warm, Don't be scary. Keep them safe and don't let them hang out alone, because if they take a photo and it's now out of their control, someone else has it, it's being shared, that feels like the end of the road for kids. They don't see a way forward after that. And so suicidal risk is a lot higher during those times. So just work very hard to keep your child safe. Hold back your judgment and the lectures in the immediate aftermath. I know you might feel like, well, I didn't raise them to share photos of themselves like that. And that might be true. But at this point, it doesn't matter. What matters is keeping your child safe. So no judgment or lectures right after they've shared something like that. There might be a time for teaching down the road when emotions have cooled, but safety comes first. And then connect with therapy if they need that to recover from that trauma, and then empower them moving forward on how to navigate in the digital world. So summary kind of rules, no socials until you're 13. All accounts should be set to private, locations off, no nudes. Supervision should be open, and we should be talking about things, we should be communicating. Focus on real activities and then screen time. So focus on the real world stuff first that works towards your values and your priorities. SmartGen recently put out a workbook that is a 7-day social media pause. And so it works kids through preparing for taking a break from social media and then navigating through that, and then recognizing and working through some of the emotions and noticing some of that response that they might have as they're working through that pause and what that's like for them. SmartGen also has tons of information on their website, things you can download, reset checklists, lots of content to learn about what's going on in the digital world there. So services for mediation, social media audits and resets. So looking at what's going on, what needs to change, how can we help you through that, helping families figure out how to navigate situations digitally. And then we are currently working on an anti-digital grooming law. And actually I should have updated this slide. It's already been introduced. So it's LB 106 and 107. So LB 106 looks at vulnerable adults, that making it illegal to groom digital grooming for adults online. And then LB 107 is making it illegal to use digital grooming on children online. So here's my contact information, and then here's the SmartGen contact information. So the website's listed here, social media platforms are there, and that's our team. And then we have English and Spanish presenters that are going out to the schools and presenting to the community as well. So comments and questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Suits. So much wonderful information and resources for navigating this era as parents. We had a question come into the Q&A pod related to YouTube use and wondering about YouTube, like if you're not logged in, but you're a viewer. So thinking about, like, I guess what information comes to mind really in relation to safety around that?
YouTube is not my favorite. I would, especially if it's a younger kid, I would highly recommend that you be using YouTube Kids for your children. For the older kids, they're probably going to reject the idea of YouTube Kids. It's going to feel too childish. But the question about if you're not logged in versus if you are logged in, I don't know if I'm necessarily an expert to that point, but I would say that would be a really good thing to call SmartGen about. What I will say is, YouTube is designed to keep you engaged and to keep showing you the next video and the next video and the next video. And it's really hard to sign off because you don't want to, what if the next video is like the most awesome video that you were going to see that night? You don't want to miss that. So it's just difficult to manage your own time on there. And then again, with the algorithm and what's being fed to you in terms of that content, a lot of the first introduction to pornography can happen on YouTube because of some of that content that gets fed to you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Another question that came in was, and actually I think it's a really interesting one, but thinking about the benefits that social media can have. So thinking about, like, we've talked a lot about like the concerns and the dangers. What about any benefits that you see for social media for like 10 to 16-year-old kids?
Well, I was going to say for the older kids that are, so we know that 99% of sororities, fraternities, sports teams in colleges are looking at social media. So for your high school juniors and seniors, it can be a really nice way to kind of market yourself if you're looking for scholarships or to join a sports team and at the college level. It can be strong in that way. For that younger group, well, I'm going to cancel out anyone who's under 13. So for 10 to 13-year-olds, absolutely not. For 13 to 16-year-olds, I mean, there can be some inspirational stuff on there. There can be some really cool things to learn and things to try. The trick is actually going and trying those in real life instead of just like saving them and never coming back to it. You have to weed through a lot of dangerous things along the way as well. So the other piece of it is it really is the way that kids are connecting with each other these days. So it can feel like if you're not on Snapchat, you don't get included in things. And so it's a difficult thing to kind of navigate. That's not really a super straightforward answer.
No, I completely agree. And I think that you bring up such a good point with the fact that, yeah, there could be very inspirational activities and things to see on social media, certainly. But I think that like it's really interesting that you say then actually following through and doing those activities in real life. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think about how many recipes I like save and then never, ever cook. Yes. I mean, my percentage is not very good right now.
I'm with you. I think my phone has so many pulled up right now in the browser that, I'll make that someday.
Yeah. And then someday never comes.
Yes. I am wondering, and I really like the spin that you took in the beginning on really focusing on that value piece and saving screen time and electronics for, filling in the time that we're not engaging in those values-based activities. We did have a question come in just asking more about values. And when there's like, I guess, differences in values from you as the parent and, your children's values or teenagers' values and kind of navigating those conversations. I guess, what recommendations do you have for that?
I mean, I think you can't force someone to adopt values because what's going to be important to someone kind of comes from within. But I think how that value is expressed can be something that is guided and taught. And so I think when our kids value something, if we try to diminish that value, it can be really invalidating. And I think it would probably drive a wedge between you and your child to try to dismiss their value and say that that's not important. But if it's something where you're like, man, I feel like this is an area of growth, I feel like this is something that we need to be working on, then I think you can think creatively on, well, how do I help them express this value in a way that aligns with my family values, or I can see it moving them toward their goals. I mean, I think it's beautiful to try to provide some guidance as parents, as our kids are kind of figuring out who they are and what they need to do with that in the world. But I think just like straight up trying to change their values, I think that's going to backfire. So I think it's kind of figuring out how to meet them where they're at and provide guidance and how they're expressing that value. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's such a great point and such great advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I do see that we are at the end of our session for today. So thank you so much, Dr. Suits, for all of the wonderful information that you gave and for sharing with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you again. And everyone, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.